President of Labasa Chambers of Commerce, ladies and gentlemen, beloved Nakan, a very good evening to all of you. I do not intend to be making a long speech, but essentially I'd like to open up the floor for any questions you may have. I'd also like to acknowledge the CEO of Water Authority of Fiji. I think Barry is one of the most traveled CEOs now, even though he's from Australia. We don't hold that against him. But this is a great opportunity because I do know from an infrastructure perspective there are many parts in Vanuatu that has problems in terms of accessibility to water. And he's here essentially to visit a number of those locations. He's meeting a number of advisory councillors tomorrow morning to hear from them firsthand as to what are the requirements of those particular localities. I'd like to just very quickly, in fact, just add on to what the Minister for Commerce and Trade had mentioned. As you know that we are a very important or interesting juncture as far as the world is concerned. We've never had such a situation. Even 100 years ago when they had the Spanish flu, the world did not close down in the manner in which it has closed down because of COVID-19 pandemic. Now, we lived in a globalized world where air travel became like traveling from Labasa to Suva or Labasa to Nambuwanu. And suddenly all of that stopped. 40% of our GDP, directly or indirectly, was dependent on tourism, or still is dependent on tourism, I should say. And of course it meant creation of jobs, sustained jobs, it meant revenue for government. It also, of course, meant our foreign reserves were very healthy because we had all the tourists coming in and bringing in foreign reserves for us, or foreign currency, which led to a very healthy foreign reserve situation for us. In fact, it still is very healthy. We when we had our first case, we developed the COVID-19 response budget because we knew immediately that borders would shut down and revenue would actually dwindle. The same way, if your business tomorrow, your revenue shuts down, what are you going to do? You may have, drips of revenue coming here and there, but not necessarily what you actually depend on. So we did that, and of course then we had to develop the national budget, which is the 2021 budget, response budget. If you look at the rationale behind that budget, it's essentially trying to, of course, continue with the essential services that we as government need to deliver to the citizens of this country, which means, water, electricity, all of that must continue. Civil services must continue. The civil service did not get a pay cut because we believe they're most critical at this point in time to get all the civil servants on board to ensure that the delivery of services actually improves. We of course remained focused on some of our fundamental objectives, which is the continuation of free education. It could have been very easy for us to say, okay, everybody now you pay for your own school fees. And government is not going to allocate hundreds of millions of dollars towards free education. We have continued with that because we believe it is a fundamental and very critical policy directive because we need our people to be educated. You as employers, of course, want people who have better access to education, have a good knowledge base, for them to be able to be good employees and indeed have very good opportunities once they leave school. We've of course tinkered around with some of the scholarships. So for example, in the tourism, we had a number of scholarships for the tourism sector. Now, of course, the tourism sector has dwindled down almost to zero. We have some openings that I can talk to you about later on. But the reality of the matter is all experts are telling us globally that even if tomorrow COVID-19 finishes off from the face of this earth, or even if, for example, a vaccine is developed and everybody gets vaccinated, we won't necessarily be able to go back to the same levels of tourism arrivals in Fiji as we had prior to COVID-19 for the next 2 or 3 years. The reality of the matter is that people are very skeptical now. The reality of the matter is, how many of you would like to go to USA now? It's a fact. Before, people would love to go to USA. How many of you would actually like to venture out to Victoria in Australia? These are the realities of modern day travel now. In the same way, people would look to us differently. This is why on the international stage we are now always positioning ourselves at all the international fora to say, as soon as a vaccine is developed, we must be one of the first up in the line. Because we're a small country, we'll get equally, doubly punished if we don't get access to the vaccine very quickly. And that's very important for us. Of course, people will assist us, but they're not going to bear the entire 100% of the cost. So we're obviously again sort of positioning ourselves when the vaccine is available. It's anybody's guess. Oxford University was the one that had the most advanced tests done. They normally have to test 4 rounds. They passed the first, second, and the third one. There were some issues, so they had to go back to the drawing board. Now, a vaccine could develop in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, hopefully less time than that. So your guess is as good as mine. In the same way, you have international air travel too. We are currently talking to our development partners as to how we can allow for travel. For example, we've announced, the Prime Minister announced a couple of months back about the Bulla bubble and how the Bulla bubble will work. And we believe we have a good system in place which will ensure that we Fijians are protected whilst allowing tourists to come to Fiji. We are currently talking to development partners. They need to be satisfied too. We of course need to be cautious too, because at the moment I don't think there's any country that had COVID and has been COVID contained for close to 200 days. That's the situation that we are in. So these are sort of the current machinations going on behind the scenes. The budget itself, of course, you'll see that, as I was saying earlier, continuing with the basic services. Some projects, of course, have been slowed down because we cannot spend the way that we were planning to spend prior to COVID-19. So, today we were in Tambia, and Kamal Gandhar, who's here with us, he sits on the board, he's also in the Ministry of Economy. We had something like 30, 40 projects. Rural electrification, extension of the grid. Everything's done. Where we'll put the posts, all of that is marked out, and generally, hundreds of people benefit from it. This place in Tambia that we went to is about 28 households, and it'll cost $475,000 to connect them to electricity. Now, there are other places where there's 30 households. It costs $500,000. Some of them are further away. It costs $600,000. All ready to go projects, but they had to be slowed down. So, this is what we've done. We've been systematic in terms of checking out which projects can come to the fore. Water, of course, is a lot more critical from one perspective than electricity. So we have to prioritize from that perspective. We've also, in respect of the budget, as the Minister for Commerce and Trade highlighted, provided a number of incentives, apart from getting rid of stamp duties, apart from, no business licenses, getting rid of STT, halving ECAL now is 5%. For you as employers, you don't have to make a contribution of 10% for your FNPF contribution. For your employees, it's now 5%. The whole idea is for you to have cash flow. The whole idea is to carry you through the business. But we have also, apart from that, provided a number of incentives for you to be able to invest. Liquidity at the moment is in excess of $1 billion. And of course, some of the banks we do know are a bit slow in respect of their response, in respect of them getting over their cautiousness, or some may argue over cautiousness in terms of lending. So we provide incentives. So for example, if you invest in warehouses, if you invest in factories, there's various investment rebates. If you subdivide land, any profit you make from the subdivision of land is non-taxable. In other words, there's no tax on your profits from subdivision of land. We've also given, for example, a number of other incentives in different areas, whether it's ICT, whether it's in respect of hotel developments, all of that. So we have provided a framework where you as businesses can, eke out what are the areas specific to you and for you to be able to invest. Cost of construction overall has come down because there's less pressure on the construction sector because less people are building compared to say 2 years ago. So when there's less jobs around, as you would know, then your ability to be able to get a better price for construction is a lot more, it has increased. So we wanted you to take advantage of those sorts of parameters that we created, some new paradigms that we created, so you are able to invest more. Construction we see is very critical because construction actually has an enormous spillover effect in terms of creation of jobs. As I explained very simply, if you're going to put up a warehouse or a building, you need a multiplicity of people to come and do, get someone dig the foundation, lay the steel, pour the concrete, paint the walls, get the plumber, the painter, the joiner, everybody. So the money actually spreads. One new incentive that we did announce a few weeks ago, and I'd like to sort of round off with that because I'd like to open up the floor for any questions you may have, is what we call a Stronger Together Job Support Scheme. We have allocated $100 million in the budget for unemployment benefits and also reskilling or upskilling people. Out of that $100 million, $5 million is allocated for retraining, upskilling people through the Fiji National University. There are some people, for example, who may say, well, okay, I no longer want to work in the tourism sector. I, in fact, have a particular, perchance or proclivity towards working in the ITC sector because, as you know, a lot of you are using more data now. People are doing Zoom calls. More people are watching Netflix. So obviously, a lot of work in the ITC sector. So, they may say, I want upskilling or retraining. So FNU can offer that to them. The balance of the $95 million is what we are using to pay those people who are now on unemployment benefits. A lot of people have actually become unemployed. So we said that they can access, in this second phase, they can access $220 a fortnight from their general account of FNPF. And FNPF puts that money in their bank accounts every fortnight. However, should they have no longer any money or don't have enough money in their general account, government pays that $220 for them through the FNPF. And we see on a weekly basis that more and more people are now depending more and more on government for those unemployment benefits. Similarly, those people who used to work in factories, for example, the garment industry has been affected quite a lot. Most of the garments we make in Fiji are sold in your Melbournes, your Aucklands, your Sydneys of the world. Most of it. Now, when there is a lockdown in Auckland, when there is a lockdown in Sydney or Melbourne or in any other part of the world where we export our garments, but predominantly Australia and New Zealand, less people go and buy garments, less people do shopping. So obviously there's less demand for our garments. And when that happens, obviously, the garment manufacturers won't call everybody to work every day. So if they're now, instead of working 5 days, they're working 2 days, we've again provided an incentive that if you have reduced hours, for a day you get $44 a fortnight. In that way we are supplementing it. And again, that's coming from the $95 million should the general account no longer be able to serve that particular demand. We announced a few weeks ago that government through this job support scheme will pay if you hire new people, not terminate existing ones, but hire new people. We will pay $268 an hour for them on your behalf. You simply have to apply to the Ministry of Economy, and they essentially, make sure that you paid all your taxes and up to date with the FNPF with the existing employees. And you may say, okay, I've got a bulk store and I want somebody to clean it out for the next 3 months, so I need it repainted. And I'd like to hire 5 people. And gets approved, we'll pay you 1 month in advance through FRCS. Everything is done through the Fiji Revenue and Customs Services. Pay you 1 month in advance. You hire the 5 people you want. You terminate them too if they do something wrong. You just need to tell us, so we don't continue to pay you the $268 an hour. So we'll pay that. So assuming that the person you hire, the particular job description, could be a job that requires more minimum wage. I'll give you a case in point. If you are, say, running a supermarket and you decide to hire 5 new people, and because you want them to work extra hours at the till, at the cash register, the minimum wage for somebody at the cash register is $3.15 an hour. We will pay you $2.68, you pay the difference, which is a few 40 cents or whatever it is. Similarly, apart from you doing the hiring and firing, you have to pay the FNPF, which is 5%. Now, our preference is that you hire people who are from the informal sector. There are people who used to make a very good living working outside ATS or Fiji Airways or some hotel where they used to sell coconuts or boil EV and sell that, or sell mithai, whatever the case may be. They no longer have their customers because those people are no longer working there. There's no tourists. So they are from the informal sector, and most people in the informal sector don't have FNPF accounts. So we'd rather that they are the ones given the first preference. Of course you can hire other people, there's no problem with that. So we've just had the first lot, and I'm happy to announce that about 600 people, 600 jobs have been created. There's no company from Labasa, except one, which is 100% government-owned company, which is Fiji Rice. They hired one person under the scheme, which is something. And hopefully I hope that you use that as an example. I'm sure many of you can make use of that. And a lot of you may actually have jobs that the minimum wage is actually $2.68 applicable. So we'll be paying the wages for you 100%. You'll simply have to pay the FNPF of 5%. And of course, if it's a job where they require gloves or other protective gear, you provide that. So I urge you, please, if one thing you can take from this particular gathering, if you're able to look at that incentive, and we can give you details where you can get it from. You may have seen it in the media today, or it was yesterday, I'm not sure, where we had all these companies, we've given them certificates of appreciation. So for example, New World has decided to hire 150 people. The other companies have taken 20, 30 people. Some companies have said, look, I want my files all cleaned out, or my bulk store painted, and they've hired 2 people. But it's 2 people who now will have a job, and you are getting paid for it. So it's a job support scheme. Other countries have done that too, and I'd urge you to please come on board with that. So ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to round off. We of course are here. The Minister for Commerce, Trade and Tourism is meeting the recipients of the MSMEs, concessional loans we're giving out. As you've announced, already close to $30 million has been dispersed. They are not grants, they are loans. The way it works is that you get $7,000 for micro enterprises, up to $14,000 for small businesses, which is up to $350,000, and gross turnover, and of course the medium enterprises. We see there's a lot more applicants in the micro enterprise section, but far less in the small and medium enterprise section. So all those opportunities do exist. Please feel free to ask any questions regarding that. And I think, as the Minister said, that we have to be able to write this out, and I think we're writing it out well. Labasa is kind of unique because, you may be somewhat affected by Sabu. Sabu is more tourism-based. You're more sort of sugar-based in other areas. The number of projects, of course, are coming on stream in Labasa. And if we're able to have that level of partnership and collaboration with government, the private sector, the NGOs, then of course we'll be able to ride this through. And we want, all this time need to be able to think creatively and be able to position ourselves, because when the borders open, everything will change completely. Everybody will be scrambling, everybody will be doing the things. And if you are now ready, prepare yourselves, you'll be in a much better position than anybody else.
Bula Minaka to everybody, a very good evening to all of you. It's actually good to be back in the north to meet the business community, and I thank you wholeheartedly, sir, on behalf of all of us for the welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, the past few months have been very testing, and it's been a very difficult time for Fiji because of the COVID-19 pandemic. It has literally brought our economic growth to a grinding halt. This year, ladies and gentlemen, we will face the largest economic contraction in Fijian history of about 21.7%. This is obviously mainly attributed to the closing of our borders, wiped out about 40% of the Fijian GDP, which is the tourism industry. Now, in order to keep Fijians going in this difficult time, the government announced a $2 billion stimulus budget, and this included reduced taxes and import tariffs, etc., that you mentioned earlier on. We also had a concessional loan facility for MSMEs. We've also had employment support for those who have lost their jobs or were on actually reduced pay hours or reduced pay or hours, just to name a few. We've noted, ladies and gentlemen, that the people of Labasa have managed to weather through this pandemic. And this is because the town does not depend on tourism. And there are a few things the business community in other parts of Fiji that they can learn from all of you. This evening, ladies and gentlemen, we want to actually hear from you. So don't be scared to say anything to the AG. He's the friendliest person here. And we want to hear from you, we want to hear what your plans are, and we want to share with you the various reforms that have been implemented to improve doing business. And I must add that your feedback, ladies and gentlemen, your experiences and your encounters and challenges will provide us also with an insight to better facilitate your needs. Over the recent months, the Fijian government has implemented pivotal reforms. I know some of you are aware of these things and some of you may not be. And then this is in the area of actually of doing business. The 2020-2021 national budget reaffirms our commitment to steering Fiji towards economic recovery through incentives such as eliminating business licensing and introducing tax cuts and targeted at businesses and households across the board reductions in customs, tariffs, and streamlining of processes, all of which you'll hear from the Attorney General a little later when he explains about the whole of the economy. It's also noted, ladies and gentlemen, that the present approach is actually a move towards becoming a facilitator and removing unnecessary regulatory requirements. And at the same time, we are making businesses more responsible and aware of the respective legislations and important procedures. And I actually want to highlight some of the key returns or reforms that we've actually done. And this is when you're actually starting a business, you've got online registration of company and business name registration, you've got online tax registration and payment, you've got elimination of business licensing from the 1st of August 2020. Starting a business requires only two particular processes, and that's registration of business name at the registrar, with the registrar of companies, and registration for your tax identification. This is a simple process of risk categorization, high risk and low, and will determine whether you requires you to undertake all procedures before you can begin operating and immediately. Full details of this, ladies and gentlemen, is available on BizFiji, the BizFiji portal, and that's bizfiji.com. And we have some of our officials here at a later stage. You can have a chat with them and they'll explain more. And I can actually provide you with some relevant information. We've also got obtaining construction permits. I know a lot of you had difficulty, not just here in Labasa, but across the country. We've got, under the regulation of the Building Permits Act 2017, the Building Permits Evaluation Committee has been established since the 30th of March 2020. And this committee provides a fast-track parallel application process for commercial and industrial building permit applications. And the applicant also may apply to the committee by completing a harmonized form and payment of about $500 as an application fee. We've also, ladies and gentlemen, had investment-related legislative changes. We are on the verge of finalizing a new investment law that will establish an open, transparent, and a simplified framework which incorporates international best practices in terms of dealing with investors. This act also, ladies and gentlemen, will allow Investment Fiji to convert itself into a fully fledged investment promotion agency, providing facilitation to all entrepreneurs, as well as actually promoting the Fiji as an investment destination abroad. The Biz Fiji portal, ladies and gentlemen, was actually launched in 2019, and it's literally a one-stop website for anyone aspiring to do business in Fiji. And it provides a user a single platform to get concise and relevant information to facilitate their application. This website is actually quite simple, ladies and gentlemen. It's easy to understand with infographics available 24/7. It aims to save time and provide a better experience for the user. Ladies and gentlemen, with respect to the way forward, we are developing also an online system for applications and approvals with regards to building permits and business licenses, as I mentioned earlier, and a continued modernization of other doing business procedures. I know I've spoken to some of you, some familiar faces here who continuously had issues, and this is the feedback that we actually want from you today to find out what can be done better. I know you're waiting to hear from the Honorable Attorney-General, but I also have a message to you as a Chamber of Commerce. Ladies and gentlemen, a Chamber of Commerce plays a very critical role with respect to connecting businesses, communities, and for the rest of Fiji as well, and also an international arena. You would have known, some of you may know, for instance, that the Fiji Chamber of Commerce has made enormous contributions towards re-engineering the Fijian economy post-COVID-19. And the key role is actually evident in the successful partnership with government in the processing of our MSME concessional loans. I see a young gentleman here nodding his head. He agrees. By way of an update, ladies and gentlemen, with the MSME concessional loan, we've processed approximately up to about 90% of the applications, out of which $28 million worth of loans have been approved. And to date, we've approved about $5 million of those loans for the Northern Division. And we'll be visiting some of the recipients tomorrow. Not only this, but this is actually a continued liaison with the government. And the Fiji Chamber of Commerce has continued to create links with international counterparts. Last year, the Macau Fiji Chamber of Commerce was actually launched. And then also FCCI, in partnership with my ministry, have hosted a number of trade and investment seminars. So don't think that just because you're in the north, you're actually forgotten. You're not, very much not. So I want to just quickly say to you, I encourage you, sir, I encourage the Labasa Chamber of Commerce to be all-encompassing. Young businesses, small businesses, big businesses, everyone. You need to be all-encompassing. And we also need to ensure that we make sure that our administrative part is actually done with respect to procedures to align yourselves to the and also to align yourselves to the Fiji Chamber of Commerce. And this will open up quite a number of opportunities to all the members, leading to growth and development of our MSMEs, joint ventures with foreign partners, or even increase in foreign and domestic investments in the north. And in addition, ladies and gentlemen, your members will also be able to participate in the capacity building programs and technical assistance. And most importantly, you will be a part of our nation building, which you all know about and which you all should be proud of. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, let me assure you that your government will continue to do whatever it takes to enable the business community now and in the future, and we will remain with you to assist you in any way that we can. So please feel free to share your comments and experiences and suggestions with us today. This will allow us to gather first-hand experiences and implement related reforms. I have a team here from the ministry who's taking notes, so be as vocal as you want to without being too nasty. And just with respect to the team, we're here today also. You can see the FCCC CEO is here. we've also know that at the moment shipping services from Nambawalu, etc., have become a lot easier, a lot cheaper, and I certainly hope all the businesses here are actually passing down the reduction in costs to the consumers.